I love my church. I love to tell the story when our pastor was starting small groups called discipleship groups or D groups. We would meet in members' homes on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. The leadership among the group can be rotated among the 8 to 14 members. Some groups pick topics and others use a freestyle, sharing their week, their experiences, and how it is with their soul. Discussions within the group remain very confidential, and prayer requests are shared, and the group always ends the meeting with a prayer. My wife and I have become personally involved in D groups in the last 7 to 8 years. We've helped to found them and to lead them. Members of our groups are supportive of each other and have become good friends. This is truly another aspect to our church life. Through personal and health crisis, others in the group were there to support us. For example, a couple of years ago, my wife had been in the hospital, then rehab, then bedfast for several weeks. During this very difficult time, our D group members were there with prayers, visits, and support. Their prayers and presence helped to heal Artie. Thank you.
Good morning, church. It's good to see you. This is kind of an interesting day for me because I'm actually recording this even a week prior, more than a week prior to when you're seeing this today. My family is going to be on just a weekend vacation, and it's something that we can do right now because of all of this recording and all that. Usually we are live for pretty much everything we do, but the parts that you see from different people, they are being pre-recorded and put into worship. And so in order to give myself and Ian an actual vacation break for a weekend, we pre-recorded all of this today. And we asked Sabrina Crum to come and give you the message. And so Sabrina will be preaching for you today. If you haven't heard Sabrina preach before, you're in for a treat. Sabrina is able to bring a message in a fresh way and connect it with stories to our lives in a way I've never seen anyone else do. So I pray that this Sunday, this morning, this 35, 40 minutes that we have together, that you will come away feeling touched by God, that something inside you will remind you of who you belong to, but also of our connection with each other.
Take 1,296.
Hey kids, we're out here on this beautiful sunny afternoon, and I hope you've been able to enjoy some sunshine. We really wish we could be with you in person, but the Bible story you're going to hear today is about two sisters named Mary and Martha. So my sister and I thought it would be fun to be out and have a chat with you today. And you know what, Carol? I've been thinking, if Jesus were going to come, I would want to throw a great big dinner party.
Great idea, Leanne. Yes, everyone would want to come and listen to Jesus.
Wow, but there would be so much work to do. I would have to get a plan. Everything would have to be perfect. I would have to make a menu and then a grocery list, and then I'd have to grocery shop, and then I'd have to get all the food prepared, and of course the house would have to be totally thoroughly cleaned, and we could cut flowers for the table, and we could get out Mom's best china and put it out on the table. Wow, that's a lot to do. So what are you going to do to help, Carol?
Oh, Leanne, I wouldn't worry about all those details at all. I would just want to be ready to listen to Jesus. I don't think anything else would be more important than sitting at his feet and hearing what he had to say. He might not be here for very long, and I would want to spend as much time with him as possible.
Okay, so I'm not getting this. You're just going to plan to sit there with him when all there's work to be done? And so I'm going to have to do everything all by myself?
Oh, Leanne, I don't think it'd be good to stress out about all of these details. Quite frankly, I don't think Jesus would care.
Well, I think he would make you help me. He wouldn't want me to do all the work by myself.
Oh, dear sister, Leanne. You may have just missed the whole point about Jesus. He never needed much. He just wanted people to gather and hear his word. Remember in that Bible story how he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish?
Yeah.
And after he blessed it and gave thanks, he gave it to all his disciples. Then he was able to feed all the men, women, and children in the crowd that gathered. And they were all full. Afterward, They were able to collect 12 baskets full of leftovers, and he fed 5,000 men, women, and children that day.
Wow. You know what, Carol? I think I get it now. If Jesus could feed that many people, he certainly could handle a supper with a dinner party with a few people. And for me, I guess, instead of being so stressed out about the details, it would be much better to just have a simple plan and then enjoy the time with him.
Well, I'm glad you finally come to your senses. In this time, little sister knows best. You know what? I don't think that Jesus would care if we just up and ordered takeout.
Oh, great idea. Would you pray with me? Jesus, we're just so thankful that there is the plan for you to come into our homes and our lives. And we just pray that we will be open to that and we won't worry about all the details. We'll just enjoy the time with you. Amen.
Amen.
And cut.
Blessed Jesus, hear your children when we pray. Bring us back into your presence, seek us when we go astray. Blessed Jesus, give us strength to do your will. Deliver us into your mercy, you have loved us, love us still. Savior like a shepherd, lead us much, we need your tender care. In your pleasant pastures feed us, let us now our souls prepare. Blessed Jesus, hear your children when we pray. Bring us back into your presence, please us when we go astray. Blessed Jesus, give us strength to do your will. Deliver us into your mercy, you have loved us, love us still. Let us come and seek your favor, let us strive to do your will. Blessed love and only Savior, with us all our spirits will. Our spirits will. Blessed Jesus, hear your children when we pray. Bring us back into your presence, seek us when we go astray. Blessed Jesus, give us strength to do your will. Deliver us into your mercy, you have loved us, love us still. Savior like a shepherd, lead us much, we need your tender care. In your pleasant pastures feed us, let us now our souls prepare. Let us now our souls prepare. Let us now our souls prepare.
Will you pray with me? Eternal God, when we get up in the morning and greet the day, we're amazed at the beauty that's around us, at the way in which you have created a world that has included us. And we are often caught in the midst of taking it for granted, taking the privilege we have of living in this beautiful area for granted. Then we realize how many other privileges we have taken for granted. And it leads us into a place of confession of who we are and who we need to be, and that we have not been the people you would have us to be. And so, we come to you asking for your forgiveness. And as we receive that forgiveness and your mercy and your grace, we are led to consider those who are around us, all of the people that you love. We think about our families. We think about the health of those of our neighbors. We think about a country in which we live. We think about people like John Lewis and his influence on all of our country. And our prayer that you will bring others into leadership in such a way that we will become more your people than caught in our own ways. And so we would offer these things even as we would pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the glory and the power, forever and ever. Amen.
I have a sister, and it wouldn't surprise me if someone compared us to Martha and Mary. Hear these words from the book of Luke. Now as they went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. This is the word of life. Thanks be to God.
Good morning. I'm going to start off my day with a story of my childhood. My mom was a church secretary, so we went to church every Sunday. No excuses. And I would go there and I would wait through the service because I had a goal in mind. I would wait and I would sing and I would pray and it would get over. And toward the end of it, I would start planning strategically because I knew that benediction was going to come and I needed to get to the table with all the cookies as quick as possible before all the other children to make sure I got the really good cookies. So everybody would stand up and say amen, and the minister would head out, and I would hook around front of the aisle and go past the piano, in through the choir room to that table of delicious cookies. And I would eat, and then I would attempt to hide, because at the end of our fellowship time, the Marthas from the kitchen would come and look for any unattended children and set us to wiping tables, doing dishes, drying dishes, and putting things away. And it would frustrate me because I was in it for the sugar, not the chores. And my mom would look at me and say, bless all the Marthas, because without them, we would have no cookies. As an adult, I finally got to be on the Martha rotation and do my own coffee hours. And I'm not going to lie, the best part of it was to go into the fellowship hall and look for my nieces and nephews who I knew were doing nothing and make them come and help me with dishes. And that's why this is one of my favorite stories. Luke chapter 10, verses 36 through 42, the story of Mary and Martha. The Gospel of Luke is a story of Jesus heading towards Jerusalem. He's heading toward his death and our salvation. It's written as a series of journeys that includes many meals. And as a Methodist, I think it highly appropriate that at each meal we learn something of what Jesus is asking from his fledgling church. At the first two meals, Jesus and his disciples were guests at dinner parties, and at the third, Jesus and his disciples showed miraculous hospitality to 5,000 people. Now we come to a second set of meals. This story takes place 6 days before Jesus' last Passover. First, there are a few assumptions that I have made in my understanding of this story. I assume that Martha was older than her siblings, since she is usually named first, which was the tradition at the time. I also assume that Lazarus was significantly younger. Otherwise, as a male, he would have been considered the head of the house. So in my mind, I picture Martha as a woman who is in the position of managing a household of younger siblings, as nothing is said of their parents. Jesus travels to Bethany and is welcomed by Martha into her house for a meal. As Martha is busy working in the kitchen, bravely trying to accommodate unexpected but welcome guests, her sister Mary sits in the other room at Jesus' feet, doing nothing to help with the preparations. And this frustrates Martha. Just think of the duties of putting a dinner together in Jesus' time. For Jesus, his disciples, your own brother and sister, who knows who else, with very little planning. This was not an event that was planned weeks or even days in advance. Jesus and his disciples were just passing through Bethany. Martha couldn't run to the grocery store to pick up what was needed. She would have to make the bread from scratch. She would have to build a fire to heat the oven. She might even have to slaughter and clean animals if there was to be meat in the meal. This was a huge undertaking. Also, Mary is behaving as if she was a man. In those days, the house was usually divided into male areas and female areas. The public room was where the men would meet, and the kitchen belonged to the women. Sitting at the feet of the teacher was also a male thing. It's not a case of getting comfortable to hear a story. In the book of Acts, when Saul of Tarsus sat at the feet of Gamaliel, he's not just gazing up adoringly and thinking, what a great rabbi. To sit at someone's feet is to be their student. If you sit at the feet of a rabbi, you want to become a rabbi yourself. So Mary is neglecting her gender-appropriate duty to assume an inappropriate role. Finally, Martha goes into the room where everyone is waiting for the food she's preparing and interrupts her conversation. She's looking for a little support to get some help from her wayward sister. So she asks Jesus, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." And he responds, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." The first thing I can say about this story is either Luke left something out or Martha is a much better person than I am, because the story does not end with, "And then Jesus and his disciples sat down to an over-salted meal that was both over and undercooked at the same time." You see, Martha was a strong believer in Jesus. We learn this in John 11. Martha is upset that her brother had died and confronts Jesus. And Jesus says to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha responds, even though she's upset and disappointed, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus says to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" Martha replies, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." Martha made the same confession of Christ that Peter did. Martha was no slacker when it came to the strength of her faith. But I believe in Luke 11, in her passionate devotion, she got a little carried away with demonstrating that devotion. This is where I think it's important to understand the positioning of this story in the book of Luke. The parable of the Good Samaritan immediately precedes the story of Mary and Martha. In the story of the Good Samaritan, Jesus illustrates his point that the Samaritan was the one who was acting as a neighbor. And then he says, "Go and do likewise." Go and do. In the story of Mary and Martha, Martha is all about going and doing. But Jesus says that it is better to sit and stay. Mary, he said, had chosen more wisely. She had figured out what was essential, to sit and stay. So in my confusion, when faced with two seemingly contradictory commands, I ask myself, is it better to be Mary or a Martha? Is it better to sit and stay or go and do? After much rumination, I have eventually come up with an answer for myself. Why not both? For Mary, it was important to sit at the feet of Jesus in order to soak up all she could. She sat in order to learn, to be nourished with understanding in his presence, as opposed to preparing a more temporary fare for the body. Martha, following the story of the Good Samaritan, chose to go and do. She busied herself in the kitchen, making sure that she was a good hostess for her God. Hospitality for the visitor, after all, is of great importance in the laws of Moses. The lesson in Jesus' response to Martha's request is, in going and doing like the Good Samaritan, don't go scrambling around frantically, overcommitting yourself and becoming overly busy. We ought to sacrifice and endure hardship, but don't let your service to others distract you from the ultimate reason for your service. Serve, but don't be frantic. Sacrifice and go out of your way, but don't neglect devoted time to worship and prayer. The point of seeing these things together in Luke 10 is that there is time enough for both. Don't let your service turn into frenetic anxiety. Jesus has tailored his messages to those particular situations and times. For some people and in some circumstances, it is right to go and do. For other people and in other circumstances, it is right to sit and learn. It all comes down to balance in our relationship with God. And understand that your position with God at this moment will not be the same as those around you. Insisting that they meet God where you are will not help their faith or yours. In Ecclesiastes, it says, there is a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to reap, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. With our relationship with God, there is a time to go and do. There is a time to simply sit still and be in his presence. Neither one is more important, but they are both incomplete without the other. The challenge for us is to discern the right action for the right time. I find it much easier to be busy. Many of us have been raised with the work ethic which says if we are not engaged in meaningful work, then we are wasting time. But that is not always the case. Here is a parable a la Facebook. There were two lumberjacks who kept a running debate going on as to who was better at cutting wood. So they decided to have a contest. For an entire day, they would each go into the forest and cut down as many trees as they could. At the end of the day, they would measure it and they would know who the better lumberjack was. So they started off, both of them furiously attacking trees with an axe. Every once in a while, one of them would stop cutting. The other man continued to chop the trees down nonstop for the entire day. At the end of the day, when they piled up all the trees, they discovered it was the man who had stopped periodically to cut wood who had cut more. It was the man who had stopped periodically from cutting wood who had cut more. The other lumberjack didn't understand. I can't figure it out, he said. I cut all day through, and you were always stopping. How did you manage to cut down more trees than I did? The other lumberjack looked at him and said, when I stopped, I was sharpening my axe. There is a time to go and do. There is a time to sit at the feet of the Master and sharpen our axe. One is incomplete with the other. It is not a question of being either a Mary or a Martha. It is a question of discerning when the right time to be one or the other is. Thank you for your time.
I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and his glory, of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story because I know it's true. It satisfies my longings as nothing else can do. I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme and glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love.
Hi there. Before quarantine, I never spent time in this little prayer garden that we have outside our sanctuary. I'd invite you to spend time here if you just need to have a quiet moment or be somewhere near the church. It's here. It's open. It's a nice place. May you go from this space knowing that God is always with you, no matter where you are. That God, the one who created you, that Jesus is the one who comes to lead and show you the way, and that the Spirit who breathes with you is always with you, beckons you to serve, to give, to listen, to do the one most needed thing. Amen.
Yeah.